this video, I'm going to introduce the idea of density. Well, who's that supposed to be? Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but this is a guy named Archimedes. It's a cartoon drawing of him, of course, but we'll come back to this. Density is a physical property and can be used to identify a substance. You'll probably recognize this as gold. See, there's some small pieces of gold in addition to some large pieces of gold. Density is independent of sample size, so it doesn't matter if the piece is small or if the piece is large, gold will always have the same density. And the value for the density of gold is 19.3 grams per centimeter cubed. So 19.3 grams for every 1 centimeter cubed of gold. So what does the formula look like for density? You probably already know this, or at least you can look at these units and you could probably project or guess what the formula would be. So it's got to be mass divided by volume, right? So that's what we see here. Density equals mass divided by volume. Well, Archimedes was a guy who lived, I don't know, I think about 2,000 years ago. And at the time, there was a king, and the king contracted or hired a goldsmith to make a crown for him. And then when the goldsmith returned the crown to the king had suspected that the goldsmith had cheated him. Now, how might the goldsmith have cheated the king? Well, what he could have done is maybe he could have alloyed the gold with some other cheaper metals, like some copper or something like that. So maybe the goldsmith kept some of the gold for himself and replaced some of the gold in the sample with some copper. Well, either way, the king wanted to know if he was cheated, so he hired Archimedes to determine if the crown was solid gold or if it had been adulterated in some way. So what Archimedes did, he took the mass of the crown, and he found the mass. They had balances or scales at that time. But he really didn't know how to get the volume of the crown. Volume was a known concept back then. You could measure the length times width times height of a regular shaped object like a cube, and you could get the volume. But the crown, of course, was an irregular object. It had a weird shape, and you couldn't easily measure the volume of it. So whether it's true or not, I don't know, but the story goes that one day Archimedes was sinking into the bathtub, and as he sunk into the bathtub, he saw the water level rise, and he realized that when he sank into the water level rose by exactly the volume of his body. So however much the water level went up, that was equal to the volume of his body. So that's when he discovered that he could get the volume of the crown by using a method called water displacement. And then apparently he ran through the streets naked shouting, "Eureka, Eureka, I found it, I found it." So once again, we can get the mass using a balance or a scale, and we can obtain the density of an irregularly shaped object using water displacement.